American philosopher Wendell Berry once wrote, "A community is the mental and spiritual condition of knowing that the place is shared, and that the people who share the place define and limit the possibilities of each other's lives. It is the knowledge that people have of each other, their concern for each other, their trust in each other, the freedom with which they come and go among themselves. When members of a community find themselves in need, how does the community respond? Does it close its eyes to their struggles? Or does it see itself as one being, where each member is intrinsically important to the other? This community supports itself with a shelf."
This is Sam. Sam is an entirely ordinary student, presently amidst midterms, between degree programs, indecisive about life after Saturday night, and currently feeling the munchies. You see, Sam finds it quite difficult to eat the advised 3 meals a day. Why, you ask? Well, as an entirely ordinary student, Sam pays tuition fees and living expenses to such a degree that leaves him with very little left for food. A tricky situation? Indeed. Lucky for Sam, his university has a reciprocity shelf. How it works. Rule number 1. The reciprocity shelf is a shelf full of basic need goods, such as non-perishables and clothing. What about hamburger helper? Possibly, Sam, possibly. Rule number 2. All amenities on the shelf are free. Free? Yes, Sam, free. Rule number 3. All amenities on the shelf are for anyone. Even me? Oh, Sam, especially you. Rule number 4. Have no shame about taking amenities from the shelf. Rule number 5. If you can give to the shelf, please do. If you cannot, have no worries. Rule number 6. Tell your friends about the shelf so that they too may give and take from it. What have you found, Sam? I found canned beans, apple cinnamon oatmeal, and hamburger helper. And how do you feel, Sam? I feel supported by my community. Well done, Sam. Well done.
So this is the reciprocity shelf here on campus, and it was brought here in the fall of 2010, and we had an event called SCORE on campus, which was a free swap of goods, and we thought that would be a great initiation for our shelf. And students actually painted it, and students keep it up a lot. Definitely staff as well, who provide things on the shelf. So this was sort of the brainchild of Tiff, and she brought it, and as part of SCORE I said, well, let's get it on campus, and so now this is where it's at.
Well, it sort of started because a group of people who work for Augustana were starting to get requests to do with like food bank type things, or landlords who are mutual friends coming to them and being like, hey, you know, I have these students who like need food, so that was the local need. The idea of the shelf came from the College of New Caledonia in Prince George, and I walked past this shelf and I was like, what is this random collection of things? And a woman told me that that this is a shelf for students to give and take that which they need. The conversation among Augustana employees reached chaplaincy.
The idea of the reciprocity shelf, from what Tiffany's background was and her experience with it, that she brought it forward. We all came together and said, is there a need for this sort of thing on campus?
Financially, students deal with learning how to budget for what might be the first time. Students can't necessarily do the things that would make things like food really affordable. They can't buy in bulk because they don't have a freezer to store like a giant box of chicken. If it's just one of them eating, you can't buy a whole bunch of fruit or vegetables that's almost going bad because it needs to be eaten right away and there's only one of you. So you have tuition costs on one hand, and then the structure of economical living not fitting with a student's life.
Part of the dilemma is that where it would be placed. And there was just a sense of that it shouldn't be upstairs in the form because it was such a public place. There is a stigma attached to it.
My opinion would be that it needs to be somewhere that's out in the open. Not only because then you might get more attention from the people who might need to access it, but it also normalizes the act of engaging with the shelf.
And the students were saying, this is an amazing thing. We want guests. We want other students to see this, to know that we care for the community in this way and that they have access to this sort of a shelf. This is a necessity of our community, and therefore some place that you want to have people walk by to say, this is part of who we are.
The forum had just opened and people were still trying to feel out the space.
So we brought it onto campus, and we had our score event upstairs in the forum. The shelf stayed there and we filled it with good, and so we were really just normalizing this daily thing that happens where students need food, and this is a way that they can do it, and there's no shame involved. Those of us that brought it here on campus weren't told that some people weren't content with it being upstairs, and so it was moved downstairs, actually into a back corner where very few students go.
I feel like the forum is kind of like this table that I just got at the office last year. So the first time that I scratched this table right here in this office, I was really upset, and I sort of pat me on the shoulder and said, Tiff, it's a table, it gets scratched. And I think the forum is like, guys, hey, committees, it's a student space, it gets students.
The shame stigma surrounding poverty would be eradicated by having the shelf upstairs. If it was in the same place that the more financially stable might spend money for a coffee or textbook, Augustana would in essence be saying to its students that we value your choice to study at our institution and the sacrifices which you make in order to achieve this education and experience. So for these reasons, we honor you and offer this shelf to our community where all are welcomed, unashamed to use. Therefore, to me, the placement of the shelf represents the value which Augustana truly has for its students and proves whether or not Augustana in fact lives out its teachings.
The first struggle that students face is getting over the stigma and self-judgment and realizing that it's okay and important to acknowledge your own poverty.
It doesn't make people feel that hesitation to go and reach out for help, because at the same time they know it's peer-to-peer.
I would love Augustana to be known as a place of cultural reciprocity, and I think we have that potential here.
I would encourage them to make use of it, to use it in the way it's intended, and that is when you have need, you take from it, and when you have privilege, you give to it.
I would put the challenge out there to students who might watch this video of how would you normalize it for yourself?
I think the shelf is a great idea. It's this cycle of giving and receiving that keeps the students taking care of each other. Particularly at like a liberal arts campus like this, where you teach people to be well-rounded individuals. A part of that is to be able to be supportive to your peers and to understand that there are people in need, and there will be times when you'll be at need.
And I think we have that potential here as a place of cultural reciprocity.